Are you tired of your color correction still looking amateur no matter what you try? Most creators miss this crucial step when they are doing their color correction, and it affects everything from contrast to skin tones to even getting your white balance right. In this video, we'll dive into why this is and how to avoid it. We're going to go beyond basic tutorials, covering 3-node balancing trick, contrast, exposure, and skin tones to help you achieve that polished professional look you've been trying to get in your videos.
The thing about color grading that a lot of people actually misunderstand is the fact that before you start thinking about making your videos look like Tenant or making your videos look like Dune or something, you have to first make all the footages work seamlessly, go to a very usable state, which we like to call color balancing. If you've actually been using DaVinci Resolve previously, I'm sure, or like I say, I'm 80% sure you're probably not doing it the right way. And let me show you how to do it the right way. So we're going to add 3 nodes by pressing Alt S. 1, 2, add 2 more. Also, you can see that I've labeled all the color space transforms to CST in, and then you have CST out, which is color space transform in, color space out, so we can track what things are. For our 3 node, we're going to call this first one exposure. The next one, we're going to call it balance, and then the last one, we're going to call it contrast. These are the 3 fundamental nodes that can make sure that any clip you have, you bring it to the most usable state possible. And let me show you how. I usually start my grading for my contrast node, which is kind of, counterintuitive, but here's why. When you come to your pivot, you're going to set your pivot to 0.336. This is because you're trying to match it for middle gray. Middle gray is a point in color where no matter what happens, everything looks consistent. To be honest, I feel like I just said nonsense. The point is, you want to be moving your colors around middle gray. As I'm moving my contrast, everything is moving across a certain region. That's too far, but then. So I'm going to adjust my contrast, just trying to look at the image and get it to a sweet spot. I'm just looking at the contrast. Don't worry about it getting too bright at this point. You just want to tweak it a bit just to add some depth, because the contrast is actually what adds a bunch of separation between the highlights and the shadows. If you look at this, if you look at your waveform down here, you can see that as I'm doing it, it's spreading out around this line here, spreading around here, because that's where the pivot I put is. So that's what the contrast is for, to add a form of separation. Now you're going to come back to your exposure, and for your exposure, you're not going to use your offset, which is what most people use. You're not going to use that because this is going to move things in a logarithmic space. And a logarithmic space basically means that things don't happen evenly across the footage, which is not photometrically correct. Hey, almost see grammar. Which is not photometrically correct. So you want to do it in a linear space. Linear basically means that everything happens from beginning to the end equally. So to do that, you're going to move to your HDR wheels here, and you're going to use your global wheels. So I'm going to step this down just a bit because I feel it's a bit high. Let's do like -1. If you look at the exposure I've done, if I turn off these 2 nodes, this is where I'm coming from, this is where we're at now. As a matter of fact, if I turn off the contrast node now, you can see that it's adding that depth just a little bit, just what you need. Can you see? Adding that depth, separating him from the highlights and shadows, just pushing them enough. And now I've pressed everything down, making everything look good. If I put my cursor on his face, you can see that we're going to look at the skin tone line, which is down here. And we're going to see how well does he sit on the skin tone line. Let's move forward just a tiny bit. You can see that he's sitting fairly consistently on the skin tone line. I see. And that's all you need. You don't need it to be straight on the dots, but you need it to be good enough that anywhere on the skin you touch, part of that circle touches the skin tone line. That's all you need, and you're good to go. Let's move to the next shot here. Let's try and do the exact same thing to the balance. If I copy and paste this, apply grade. Let's move to a sweet spot on this footage, something around here. Let me switch off here, and I turn this on. I've applied the grade by right-clicking on this one and saying apply grade. It applies whatever I've done there to this one. So technically, you can see that what I've done there doesn't exactly transfer to this one, especially because of the exposure. So if I turn off the exposure and the contrast, you can see that this image was towards a brighter end compared to my other image, which was my brother, by the way. So I've applied the contrast, but the exposure, I need to take it a bit more down. So I'm going to do maybe -2. And this is giving this kind of alright vibe. I might want to raise it up just a tiny bit, maybe like -1.5. So this is where we're coming from, this is where we're at now, and this is looking good. It's looking good. You can take things one step further by trying to maybe gauge it yourself and try to mount things, but these things are actually looking good. If you look at their skin tones are looking good and on point. Let's move on to another clip. Let's use this one precisely. So if I do exactly what I did the last time, which was to adjust my contrast first, just push it just a bit and I come down to my exposure. Now if I come down to my exposure, I come down here and I stop by -1. Let's see how that looks. -1, looks fairly reasonable. Let's try -2, and now it's looking better.
So now you know the essentials of color correction, but your skin tones are probably still not looking right. The 3-node balancing tricks are great to start with, but those steps alone are not enough. It's actually kind of useless if you don't know how to nail skin tones. And the secret I'm going to share with you is a game changer. Click this video on screen to learn the secret to perfect skin tones that will take your color grading skills to the next level. I'll see you there.